The crying hit me first. Quiet, desperate sobbing coming from my own son's garage at 9:15 on a Friday night in December. The kind of crying someone does when they're trying not to be heard. My name is Harold Morrison, I'm 58 years old, and I've been retired from teaching high school chemistry for about 8 months now. I wasn't supposed to be in Portland that night. The chemistry conference at the downtown Hilton ended 2 hours early, and instead of staying at the hotel like I'd planned, I thought I'd surprise my family with a visit. After all, I'd driven 3 hours from Eugene, and it had been almost a month since I'd seen them. What's another 45 minutes to spend an evening with family? Lost my wife Susan 3 years ago to cancer, and since then it's just been me keeping an eye on my kids from a distance. Tim, my oldest at 29, works at the rail yard. Jennifer is 26, married to Chad Stevens for about 2 years now, and she's 6 months pregnant with their first, and Alex, my youngest at 15, who's been in a wheelchair since the car accident that took his mother. When I pulled my old Ford truck into Tim's driveway, I expected to see the warm glow of the living room through the front windows, maybe the flicker of the television, perhaps Alex doing his homework at the kitchen table. The house looked peaceful from the outside. A nice 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Christmas lights still up from last week, 2 cars in the driveway. Everything looked normal. But that faint yellowish glow coming from the attached garage stopped me cold. Not the bright overhead fluorescent that Tim used when he was working on something, but a dim light, like a small lamp. The side door to the garage was slightly ajar, just a crack. And as I walked closer, that's when I heard it clearly. Crying. I pushed the door open slowly, not sure what I'd find. The garage was brutally cold. I could see my breath in the air. The concrete floor was stained with old motor oil. Tools hung on the walls. Tim's workbench sat in the corner covered in sawdust. And there on the floor in the far corner was a sleeping bag. A thin, cheap sleeping bag that looked like it came from a clearance bin. Next to it sat a small battery-powered camping lantern, and beside that, a stack of library books with frayed covers. On that sleeping bag, wearing a heavy jacket, a knit cap, and gloves with the fingers cut out, sat my 15-year-old son, Alex. His wheelchair was parked beside him, and his face was buried in his hands, his thin shoulders shaking. Alex! My voice came out rough, catching in my throat. His head snapped up, and I saw the panic flash across his face before recognition set in. Dad, what are you doing here? I crossed the garage in 3 strides and knelt down beside him, my knees protesting against the cold concrete. Up close, I could see things that made my heart sink. Dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. His face thinner than I remembered, his jacket, while warm, was clearly too small. He'd grown in the last month, and the sleeves ended 3 inches above his wrists. His hands, even with those fingerless gloves, were red and chapped from the cold. What are you doing in the garage, buddy? I kept my voice gentle, even though everything inside me was screaming. I live here now, he said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. Then he quickly wiped his face with his sleeve. Did Tim know you were coming? No, I surprised everyone. Conference ended early. I looked around the garage again, really seeing it this time. A case of bottled water, a box of granola bars, a small plastic bin that probably held his clothes. This wasn't temporary. This was a living arrangement. What do you mean you live here? Alex wouldn't meet my eyes. Chad needed the house organized better. He said the garage was just temporary until they figured out a better arrangement after the baby comes. That was 3 months ago. 3 months. 3 months of my son sleeping on a concrete floor in December in Oregon. 3 months of him being out here while I thought everything was fine. While I called every week and heard everything's great, Dad from Tim. While Chad, my son-in-law, the guy who'd seemed like such a blessing when Jennifer brought him home 2 years ago, was systematically pushing my disabled son out of his own family. Alex, how many bedrooms does this house have? 3. His voice got even quieter. Tim has 1. Chad and Jennifer have the master. Chad turned the 3rd one into his home office. He makes money online and said he needed space for his business. He said it's how he's going to support the baby and pay for my medical stuff. I had to take a slow breath to keep from exploding right then and there. Chad Stevens. Always talking about his online ventures, always promising the next big break, always so helpful, so concerned about the family finances, always making sure everyone knew how expensive Alex's care was. Where do you eat dinner? I usually microwave something. There are frozen dinners in the freezer in here. He gestured to an old chest freezer against the wall. It's easier than bothering everyone. Chad says pregnant women need quiet time, and my wheelchair makes noise on the hardwood floors. He got me these special wheel covers, but they don't really help much. Bothering everyone? The words felt like acid in my mouth. Chad explained it all to Tim. How much space I need for the wheelchair, how much my medical appointments cost, how the baby needs to come first now. It makes sense when you look at the numbers. Alex's voice got smaller. Tim feels bad about it sometimes, but Chad showed him the budget spreadsheets. How we can't afford to keep me in a regular bedroom when the baby's coming. Chad says maybe after his business really takes off, we can look into one of those group homes that specialize in kids like me. Kids like me. My son talking about himself like he was a problem to be solved, a burden to be managed. Alex, where's Tim right now? Working late shift at the rail yard. He won't be back until tomorrow morning. And Chad and Jennifer went to her doctor appointment in Portland. They're staying overnight at a hotel because Jennifer gets car sick on long drives now. So Alex was here alone, in a cold garage, on a Friday night, while his family was living their lives around him like he didn't exist. When's the last time you were inside the house? I mean, really inside, sitting with the family? He had to think about it. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Thanksgiving, I guess. Chad insisted I eat with everyone. He said it was important for family appearances, especially with Jennifer's family coming over. Appearances? Yeah. Jennifer's parents don't know about the arrangement yet. Chad says they might not understand that it's temporary, that they might think we're not taking good care of family. Alex pulled his knees up to his chest as much as he could manage. But after dinner, Chad explained to me that holidays were different, that day-to-day living needed to be practical. He showed me this article about how stress affects pregnant women, how loud noises and disruptions can cause premature labor. He said I needed to understand that I was from the old life, before he and Jennifer got serious, and now the baby represents the new life, the future. And the future had to come first. Every word was a knife. Here was Chad, the guy I'd welcomed into my family like a son, the guy I'd been grateful for because he seemed to love Jennifer and genuinely care about all of us, the guy who always asked about my health, always remembered to send birthday cards, always talked about building a strong family foundation, and he'd been slowly, methodically destroying my youngest son's sense of worth while wrapping it in spreadsheets and practical concerns. Alex, look at me. I waited until he raised his eyes. They were Susan's eyes, the same soft brown that could break your heart when they were sad. Am I mad at you? I don't know. His voice cracked. Are you? Am I bad, Dad? Is that why they don't want me around anymore? I try to be quiet. I try not to need anything. I use the bathroom in the basement even though it's hard with the wheelchair because Chad says the upstairs one is too close to where Jennifer rests. I stay out here so I don't disturb anyone. But it's still not enough. I'm still a problem. That did it. That shattered every bit of control I had left. I pulled my son into my arms, wheelchair and all, and held him while he cried. Really cried. Not that muffled, hidden crying from before. His whole body shook with sobs, and I felt his tears soak through my shirt. You are not bad, I said firmly into his hair. You are not a problem. You are my son, and you are loved, and none of this is your fault. Do you hear me? None of this. Then why? The question came out broken, desperate. Why would Tim let this happen? Why doesn't he protect me anymore? He used to stand up for me after Mom died. He used to make sure I had what I needed. What changed? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt him more. Tim had always struggled with guilt after Susan's death. He'd been driving that night, coming back from Alex's physical therapy appointment. A drunk driver ran a red light and hit them head on. Susan died instantly. Alex's legs were crushed. Tim walked away with scratches, and that survivor's guilt had been eating at him ever since. When Chad came along with his confident talk about family financial planning and practical solutions, Tim had probably seen it as relief from the burden of constant decision-making about Alex's care. I don't know, buddy, but I'm here now, and things are going to change. Right now. Tonight. He pulled back and looked at me with those red, swollen eyes. What do you mean? I mean, pack whatever you want to keep. You're coming home with me tonight. But Tim will be confused. Chad will be furious. Jennifer's already stressed. Jennifer's about the baby, and if I just disappear... Let me worry about Chad. Let me worry about Tim and Jennifer. I stood up, my knees popping, and helped him into his wheelchair. Where are your clothes? He showed me the plastic bin. It contained maybe a week's worth of clothing, most of it dirty. His school uniform from the local public high school was wadded in the corner, coffee stain on the shirt, collar frayed. There was a winter coat that was too small, some pajamas, underwear that had seen better days. Everything a 15-year-old boy owned, reduced to what could fit in a storage container. What about my books? He gestured to the stack from the library. We'll get them. We'll get everything that matters to you. But first, we're getting you out of this garage. As I loaded his few belongings into my truck, Alex kept looking back at the house nervously. Dad, maybe we should wait until Tim gets back. Maybe we should call Chad first. He's going to say I'm being dramatic again, that I agreed to this arrangement. You're 15 years old. You don't get to agree to sleeping on concrete in winter. You don't get to agree to being isolated from your own family. I opened the passenger door and helped him transition from his wheelchair to the seat. We'd done this transfer 1,000 times over the past 3 years since the accident, but tonight it felt different. Tonight it felt like I was finally doing my job as his father. I folded his wheelchair and secured it in the truck bed, then got behind the wheel. Before I could start the engine, I saw a light come on in the front window of the house, then another. Someone was home. The front door opened and Chad Stevens stepped out onto the porch. He was tall and lean, with the kind of practiced confidence that came from years of sales pitches and smooth talking. Even at this hour, even supposedly coming back from a medical appointment, his hair was perfectly styled and his clothes looked like he'd just gotten dressed. Harold, what are you doing? Here? He didn't sound surprised to see me. He sounded annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important, picking up my son. I kept my voice level, but everything in me wanted to get out of that truck and explain to Chad exactly what I thought of his family management skills. You can't just take Alex without discussing it with us first. We have arrangements, routines that work for everyone. Jennifer's not feeling well and sudden changes upset her. I looked at this man who'd been systematically destroying my son's life while positioning himself as the responsible adult making tough decisions. Chad, Alex has been sleeping in your garage for 3 months, in winter, eating frozen dinners and granola bars, using a basement bathroom because his wheelchair might disturb Jennifer, missing medical appointments because transportation is inconvenient. I'd say your arrangements aren't working for everyone. That's temporary. We've explained this. With the baby coming, we need to reorganize the space. Alex understands the financial pressures we're under. His care is expensive, and we're doing our best to manage resources responsibly. His care is expensive? I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel. He's not a line item in your budget, Chad. He's a 15-year-old boy who lost his mother and needs his family to love him, not manage him. You don't understand the daily reality of what we're dealing with. The wheelchair accessibility issues, the constant medical needs, the impact on Jennifer's pregnancy stress levels. I've done the research. There are excellent facilities that specialize in caring for kids with Alex's needs, places where he'd have professional support and peer interaction with others who understand his situation. In the passenger seat, Alex had gone very quiet. I could see him shrinking into himself, hearing Chad talk about him like he was a problem to be solved rather than a person to be loved. Get Jennifer, I said quietly. If we're going to have this conversation, she should be part of it. This is about her brother, after all. Jennifer's resting. The doctor said she needs to avoid stress, especially in her 3rd trimester. These kinds of family disruptions can trigger premature labor. Then you'd better make this simple. Alex is coming with me tonight. You can call Tim, you can call Jennifer's doctor, you can call whoever you want. But my son is not sleeping in that garage for one more night. Chad's expression shifted, and for just a moment I saw something calculate and cold flicker across his face. You're making a mistake, Harold. You don't know what you're taking on. Alex requires constant supervision, specialized equipment, regular therapy appointments. It's not something a retired teacher living alone can handle long-term. I raised him for the first 12 years of his life. I think I can manage. That was before the accident, before the wheelchair, before the depression and the behavioral issues. You have no idea what he's really like to live with day after day. I looked at Chad Stevens, this man who'd married my daughter and convinced my family that isolating a disabled child was practical resource management, and I made a decision that had been building for the past hour. Start the truck, Alex, I called through the window. He looked confused, but reached over and turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. What are you doing? Chad stepped off the porch. I'm leaving. With my son. If you want to call the police, go ahead. I'd love to explain to them why a 15-year-old disabled boy has been living in an unheated garage for 3 months, while the adults in his life discussed his behavioral issues. Chad's face went pale. For the first time since I'd known him, his smooth confidence cracked. Harold, you're overreacting. Let's discuss this rationally. There are legal considerations here, custody arrangements. You can't just take Alex without proper documentation. Watch me. I put the truck in reverse. Tell Tim to call me when he gets home from work. Tell Jennifer I'll explain everything when she's feeling up to it. But Alex isn't going back in that garage. Not tonight. Not ever. As we pulled away, I saw Chad standing in the driveway with his phone already out. Let him make his calls. Let him spin whatever story he wanted. I had Alex safe beside me, and that was all that mattered right now. The drive back to Eugene was quiet for the first hour. Alex stared out the window, occasionally wiping his eyes. I could tell he was processing everything that had just happened, trying to figure out if this was real or if he'd somehow end up back in that garage tomorrow. Dad? His voice was small in the darkness. Yeah, buddy. Chad's gonna call Tim. Tim's going to be mad. Jennifer might go into early labor from the stress. What if I really am causing problems for everyone? I pulled over at the next rest stop, one of those little roadside areas with picnic tables and vending machines. It was past 10 p.m. and the place was empty. I turned off the engine and looked at my son. Alex, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Chad Stevens has been lying to you for months. He's been manipulating everyone in this family, but especially you. He's made you believe that your needs, your basic human dignity, is somehow negotiable. It's not. But the money stuff he showed Tim, the spreadsheets about my medical costs. I've been a teacher for 32 years. I've seen every kind of family situation you can imagine. I know what real financial hardship looks like, and I know what manipulation disguised as practical planning looks like. I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. Tim makes good money at the rail yard. Jennifer has her teacher's salary, even if she's taking maternity leave. Chad talks a big game about his online business, but have you ever seen any actual money from it? Alex thought about that. No, he always says it's about to take off, that he's building long-term success instead of focusing on short-term profits, right? So whose money has been paying for the house, the cars, the food, Jennifer's medical care? Tim's mostly. Sometimes Jennifer's savings. Alex's voice got quieter. Chad says his business income is irregular, so he focuses on the big picture planning while Tim handles day-to-day expenses. Alex, Chad Stevens is a con man. Not the kind who steals your wallet on the street, but the kind who moves into your family and convinces everyone that his bad decisions are really smart planning. He's been using you as a scapegoat for his own failures, making everyone believe that you're the expensive burden when really, he's the one draining the family resources. We sat in silence for a few minutes while Alex processed this. A truck driver pulled into the rest area, got out to walk his dog, nodded to us, and drove away. Normal people living normal lives, not sitting in a parking lot at 10 p.m. trying to explain to a 15-year-old why his family had let him down so badly. What's going to happen now? Alex asked finally. Now we go to my house. You take a hot shower. You sleep in a real bed. Tomorrow we go shopping for clothes that fit you. Monday we call your school and make sure you can transfer back to Eugene for the rest of the year. What about Tim? What about Jennifer and the baby? We'll figure it out. But Alex, I need you to understand something. You are not responsible for fixing this family. You're not responsible for making everyone else comfortable with your existence. You're a 15-year-old kid who deserves to feel safe and loved and wanted. That's not negotiable. We got back on the road. About halfway to Eugene, I stopped at a late-night diner, one of those old-school places with vinyl booths and endless coffee. The waitress looked like she'd been working there since the Carter administration, but she was kind to Alex, bringing him extra napkins without being asked and making sure his water glass stayed full. I ordered Alex a real meal: meatloaf, mashed, potatoes, green beans, a slice of apple pie. I watched him eat slowly at first, like he was afraid someone would take it away. Then faster, like he couldn't remember the last time he'd been actually hungry instead of just surviving on convenience food. When did you last have a sit-down meal? I asked gently. Thanksgiving, a month ago. He took another bite of meatloaf. Chad insisted I eat with everyone because Jennifer's parents were there. He said it would look bad if I wasn't included. What about regular dinners, before this garage situation? Alex had to think about it. Chad started talking about family efficiency pretty soon after he moved in. He said with Jennifer working and him building his business, it made more sense for everyone to eat on their own schedules. He set up a system where Tim would grab something on his way home from work. Jennifer would have whatever settled her stomach during the pregnancy. Chad would eat while working in his office, and I could heat up whatever was convenient. So you've been eating alone for how long? Maybe a year and a half? Since Chad's business started requiring more focused time. Alex paused, then added quietly. He explained that family dinners were kind of an outdated tradition anyway, that modern families needed to be more flexible and efficient. Modern families. Efficient systems. Chad had an explanation for everything, and every explanation involved isolating Alex a little bit more. That's going to change, I said. From now on, you eat real meals at regular times. With company if you want it, alone if you prefer it, but always with dignity. He looked up at me, pie halfway to his mouth. How long can I stay with you? As long as you want to. As long as you need to. Chad's going to make me come back. He'll convince Tim that you can't handle my medical needs long term. He'll say I need specialized care that costs too much for a retired teacher. Let me worry about Chad. Let me worry about Tim. I signaled the waitress for the check. Your job is to be a 15-year-old kid. My job is to make sure you get to do that safely. We got to my house around midnight. It wasn't much. A small 3-bedroom cottage on a quiet street near the university where I'd taught for decades. Since Susan died, I'd been living alone, keeping busy with volunteer work at the fire department and substitute teaching when they needed me. But I'd kept Alex's room ready, hoping he'd want to visit more often. The room still had his model airplanes on the shelves, his Star Wars posters on the walls, books from when he was younger, but also space for the young man he was becoming. I helped Alex get settled. He took a shower, a long one, and when he came out, his skin was pink from the heat and steam. I gave him a pair of my old sweatpants and a t-shirt, both way too big on him, and he crawled into bed wearing them. Dad? His voice was small in the darkness. I'd been about to leave, but I sat down on the edge of the bed instead. Yeah, buddy? What? Yeah. If I have nightmares about being sent back, then I'll be right down the hall. You can wake me up anytime for any reason. What if Chad's right about me being too expensive? What if you realize... Stop. I put my hand on his shoulder. Alex, listen to me. You could never be too expensive. You could never be too much trouble. You are my son. You are family, and real families don't give up on each other. Real families don't make cost-benefit analyses about love. He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, I missed you, Dad. I missed feeling like I belonged somewhere. You belong here. You've always belonged here. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see what was happening and come get you. I stayed with him until he fell asleep, his breathing evening out, his face finally relaxing for the first time in months. Then I went to my own room and called Tim's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. He was probably still at work, but I suspected Chad had already been calling him, spinning his version of events. Tim, this is your father, I said to the voicemail. Alex is with me. He's safe, he's warm, he's fed, and he's not going back to that garage ever. We need to talk tomorrow, face to face. Don't call tonight. Come to my house when you get off work. We'll talk then. I hung up and sat on my bed, suddenly exhausted. But I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying Alex's words from the garage. Am I bad, Dad? How long had he been asking himself that question? How many nights had he cried himself to sleep on that concrete floor, trying to understand what he'd done to deserve this treatment? The next morning, I woke up at 6:30 out of habit. I made coffee, started breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and waited. Alex appeared around 8, navigating his wheelchair down the hallway with practiced ease. He looked better, rested, but there was still that wariness in his eyes, like he was waiting for someone to tell him this was all temporary. Morning, buddy. Hungry? He nodded, and I served him a full plate. We ate together in comfortable silence, and I watched color come back into his face. Real color, not the grayish pallor he'd had in that garage. After breakfast, I suggested we go shopping. Shopping for what? Alex asked. Clothes that fit, school supplies, whatever you need. I grabbed my keys. We're going to Target. At Target, I bought Alex everything he needed and several things he just wanted. New jeans that were the right length, shirts that weren't hand-me-downs, a winter coat that actually fit his grown frame, Toiletries, school supplies, books he'd been wanting to read. I didn't care about the cost. Every item was a small act of love, a small way of saying, "You matter. You deserve new things. You are not a burden on anyone's budget." Alex kept trying to talk me out of things. "That's too expensive, Dad. I don't really need the name brand stuff." Each time I'd put the item in the cart anyway and say, "Let me decide what we can afford." By the time we got back to my house, it was almost noon. I was helping Alex put his new clothes away when the doorbell rang. I knew who it would be. Tim stood on my porch looking haggard. He'd driven straight from his night shift, still wearing his work clothes, safety vest draped over his arm, exhaustion written all over his face. Behind him, his arms crossed and his expression hard, stood Chad. "Dad, we need to talk," Tim said. "Yes, we do." I stepped back and let them in, but I didn't invite them to sit. We stood in the foyer, and I could hear Alex's wheelchair from down the hall. He'd heard them arrive. "Chad told me you took Alex without any discussion, that you just showed up and made demands. That's not like you, Dad. You want to explain to me why your brother has been sleeping in your garage for 3 months? It's a complicated situation," Tim started. "With the baby coming, we needed to reorganize the space." Alex understood the necessity. Alex is 15 years old. He doesn't get to understand the necessity of sleeping on concrete in winter. He doesn't get to agree to being pushed out of his own family. "Nobody pushed him out," Chad interrupted. "We made practical adjustments based on changing family dynamics and financial realities. Alex's care requirements are significant, and with Jennifer's pregnancy, we had to prioritize resources." I looked at my oldest son. "Tim, you're hearing this, right? You're hearing Chad talk about your brother like he's a line item in a budget." Tim's face tightened. "Dad, you don't understand the daily reality of what we're dealing with. Alex does require a lot of care. The wheelchair modifications to the house, the medical appointments, the special equipment, it's constant. He's your brother." "Of course it's constant. That's what family means." "You don't live with it every day," Tim said, and I heard the exhaustion in his voice, the guilt, the constant worry about doing everything right, the financial pressure. When Chad offered to help manage things, to bring some organization to the chaos, "So you let him organize your brother out of the house?" "The garage arrangement was temporary," Chad said smoothly, "until we could find a more permanent solution that worked for everyone. There are excellent residential facilities that specialize in Alex's needs, places where he'd have professional care and social interaction with peers who understand his challenges." "His challenges?" The voice came from behind us. Alex had wheeled himself down the hallway and was staring at Chad. "You mean my wheelchair?" "Alex, we've discussed this," Chad said, his tone shifting to that patient voice adults use with difficult children. "Your mobility needs require specialized accommodations that are expensive and disruptive to family routines. Professional care facilities have resources that—" "Stop." Alex's voice was stronger than I'd heard it in years. "Just stop talking about me like I'm not here. Stop talking about me like I'm a problem to be solved." He looked at Tim. "When's the last time you asked me what I wanted? When's the last time you talked to me about anything other than my medical appointments or what I cost the family?" The silence that followed was devastating. Tim looked at his brother, really looked at him, and I saw the moment it hit him, all of it. Every choice he'd made, every time he'd let Chad make decisions about Alex's life, every moment he'd chosen the easy path over protecting his younger brother. "I didn't realize," Tim whispered. "Yes, you did," Alex said quietly. "You just didn't want to deal with it. It was easier to let Chad handle everything, even when handling everything meant putting me in the garage." "That's not fair," Tim started. "Fair?" Alex's voice cracked. "You want to talk about fair? I've been sleeping on concrete for 3 months. I've been eating frozen dinners and granola bars. I've been using a bathroom in the basement because my wheelchair might disturb Jennifer. I've been living like I don't belong in my own family, and you want to talk about what's fair?" Tim looked sick, actually physically ill. Chad stepped forward, trying to regain control of the conversation. "This is exactly the kind of emotional manipulation I was trying to protect the family from. Alex has behavioral issues that require professional management." "The only behavioral issue Alex has," I said quietly, "is that he trusted you. He trusted all of you to take care of him, and instead, you made him believe he was worthless." I stepped closer to Chad. "You want to know what I think happened here? I think you moved into this family and saw an opportunity. A disabled kid whose care you could use to justify your own failures. Every time your business didn't make money, every time you couldn't contribute financially, you could point to Alex and say, "Look how expensive he is. Look how much he costs us." Chad's mask finally slipped completely. "You have no idea what you're talking about, old man. I've been holding this family together while you've been living in your retirement bubble." Tim was drowning in guilt and expenses. Jennifer needed stability during her pregnancy. Someone had to make the hard decisions. "The hard decision," I said, "would have been getting a real job instead of playing businessman while living off my son's railroad wages." "That's enough," Tim said suddenly. We all turned to look at him. "Dad's right. Chad, this is over. All of it. Alex isn't going back to the garage, he's not going to any facility, and you're not making any more decisions about my family." "Tim, you're being emotional," Chad said. "Think about Jennifer. Think about the baby. Think about the financial stability I've been working to build. I am thinking about Jennifer. I'm thinking about what kind of man I want to be when her child looks at me. I'm thinking about what kind of uncle I want to be." Tim looked at Alex. "I'm thinking about the brother I used to be before I let someone convince me that love was a budget item." Chad stared at him, then at me, then at Alex. When he realized none of us were backing down, his face hardened. "Fine. You'll regret this. All of you. When reality hits and you remember why these arrangements were necessary, don't come crying to me for help." "We won't," Alex said simply. "We never needed your help. We needed you to leave us alone." Chad left without another word, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Tim stood there in the sudden silence, looking lost. "I'm sorry," he said to Alex. "I'm so sorry. I let him convince me that managing your care was more important than just loving you." "I know," Alex said. "But sorry isn't enough anymore. If you want to be my brother again, you have to earn it." Tim nodded. "How do I do that?" "You start by showing up. Really showing up. Not just for the big stuff, but for the regular stuff too. That was the beginning of the real work." Over the next few months, Tim did show up. He started coming to Alex's physical therapy appointments. He learned about wheelchair maintenance. He took Alex to movies and let him pick what they watched. He started asking Alex's opinion about things that had nothing to do with medical care. I called Child Protective Services myself and reported everything. The investigation took 6 weeks, and the final report was damning. Substantiated neglect. Immediate custody change recommended. They made my temporary guardianship official. Chad fought it initially, trying to paint himself as the victim of family manipulation. But when the investigators interviewed Alex's teachers, his doctors, even the neighbors who'd wondered why they never saw the boy anymore, the truth was undeniable. Jennifer, to her credit, read the CPS report and made her own choice. She filed for divorce before the baby was born. She said she couldn't live with someone who'd treat a child that way, even if that child wasn't hers. Today, 8 months later, Alex splits his time between my house and visiting with Tim and Jennifer. The legal custody is mine, but the emotional custody belongs to all of us now. Alex is thriving in school, made the debate team, gained back the weight he'd lost. He's got friends who see him as Alex first, wheelchair second. Last month was his 16th birthday. We had a real party. Me, Tim, Jennifer, and baby Sarah, Alex's friends from school. Jennifer gave Alex a card that said, "I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner. You deserved better." Tim gave him a baseball glove, his own from high school. "I know you can't use it the way I did," Tim said, "but I wanted you to have it, to remember that I'm trying to be the brother you deserved all along." Alex looked at that glove for a long time, then said, "I missed you, Tim. The real you. I missed me too, but I'm back now." Sometimes I think about that night, standing in the garage, seeing Alex on that sleeping bag. How close we came to losing him in all the ways that matter. How a family can fall apart so quietly that nobody notices until it's almost too late. But we didn't lose him. And sometimes that's all you can do as a parent, as a family member, as a human being. Show up. Pay attention. Act when it matters most. Down the hall right now, I can hear Alex on the phone with his friends making plans for tomorrow. Real plans, with real friends, in a real home where he belongs. The kind of laughter that means everything is going to be okay. Sometimes the most dangerous people in a family aren't strangers. They're the ones who smile while they steal your child's soul, one practical decision at a time. A real man doesn't just provide for his family, he protects their dignity, their worth, and their right to belong, even when it's inconvenient or expensive.